previous video, we have managed to create an application that create a physical folder and file wherein we store all of those information that we have typed. But today, we'll be exploring another technique on saving this information into a text file, which is called flat file databasing. Flat file databasing is represented by rows and columns on a text file. The columns are separated by any symbols that we assign. So for example, if we create an application that has 3 columns, it will be separated on the special characters that we'll be using. It can be a comma or any special characters that we are not using on creating the actual data that we have. And each column has represents what specific data to be stored. In our case, for today, we'll be talking about a 4-column data. So the first column would be the ID of this specific data that we are trying to insert, name of the person, username, and the password of that actual account. So for each of those rows that being inserted, it is represented by the ID that we'll be generating. So all we have to do is to create this form so that we can follow the actual video. First is we have the name, username, password, and retype password. Take note, all of those controls are what we call a text input and label. Then afterwards, after creating or inputting those data, when we save all of those data, we'll write it on our text file that we'll be generating. Take note that text file that we'll be creating will not be manually created, but created through code. So let's start. So if you will be looking at the structure of the database or flat file database that we'll be using, it composed of the ID. Now, for the special character that I'll be using the @ symbol instead of using the comma. ID, then the name of the person, and then @ sign would be the username of the person, and then another @ sign for the actual password of the account that being created. So when we are dealing with this one, all of those data will be inserted in a sense that it has an @ sign. So to start, we need to create a class that uses or manage all of the transactions or codes that we'll be doing. So first is I'll be creating a class. The name of the class would be user registration. Okay, so I'll create CLS user registration and hit enter. So if we'll be creating this class, we have managed to do this class automatically. But before we create the functionalities that we want to insert, we need to import some libraries. I'll be using system.io. Take note, any file manipulation and folder manipulation will only be enabled when we import using system.io. So the important thing when creating a class is that the important thing when creating the actual registration or user registration is to insert the data. So today, the first step is to create a method that insert all of those data being inputted in the text box, inserted into a text file. So now, first is, as I told you, we'll be creating a text file or a flat file database on a true code. So how do we manage that? So first is we'll be creating the registration first. We'll be creating the creation of the actual file first. So first is public void create flat db. Okay, so flat db, and then we'll be creating some file on it. So first is what? We'll be creating a default folder first so that it's a lot easier for us to manage the accessing of the database that we are trying to do. So fpath, so I'll be creating a string fpath which is composed of application that startup path Okay, that would be the starter path, the bin debug, and then concatenate it with the name of our database. So the name of our database depends on you. Depends on what would be the declaration that we'll be creating. For me, I'll be naming the database to this database with user reg dot text. Okay, so user registration dot txt. So now if I'll be creating create flat db, what I'll be doing is that just create the data or the file that create. So file that create, and then you put f path for the path, and then that close. Okay, so that it will be usable to another stream. But what we'll be doing is we need to check whether the file is existing or not. If file that exists fpath is equal to false. If it's not existing, then we'll be creating the actual file. So now we have managed to create the flat file database of our program. So this indicates the actual data that we are trying to manipulate later on. So we put all of those data being inserted on a flat file database, which is the name is user registration. So now the next part is to create the saving option. Okay, so public void create user. Okay, so we will be having a parameter. What would be the parameter that we'll be using? So the create user indicates the needs the username of the person, and then string the person name. Okay, person name, and then the password, string password. Okay, so now if you want to monitor if the password is being typed correctly, our password. Okay, our pass for the type password. So these are the four data that we need to store on our information on our actual database. The rpass, pname, and the username. So now, in order for us to manipulate or store that data, we'll be creating a separator for each of those data. Take note, we need to separate all of those data into what we call special character. For me, I'll be using the @ sign. So in order for us to concatenate those data, we'll be using a variable string wdata to write data, which is username. Okay, let's look at the actual structure that we want to do. Name, username, and password. Okay, name, username, and password, and take note of the ID. Later on, we'll be checking or creating a way to manage to do or to manage to get the ID of the last item to be inserted. So for example, wdata, pname. Okay, so plus @ sign, plus we put username, plus @ sign again, plus password. Okay, so password. Okay, so we managed to create this data. Okay, create this data, write data, so that we can insert this entire data into a text file, which is our flat file database. So to further improve to continue, you need to create a stream writer. Okay, stream writer str is equal to new stream writer. Now the question is, what would be the path that we will be using? Now, since we have managed to declare a global variable inside the class, which is fpath, that is the reference path that we'll be using for the flat file database. Fpath. Okay, so fpath. Then what we want to do is str that write line. Okay, that write line, and then we put the actual data to be written. Wdata, and then str that close. Now, Another parameter that is very important is here. On this parameter, on the stream writer, you need to put this one. There is an option called bool append. The meaning of bool append represents if whether we write the actual data, if the actual data being written will be, the actual file being written will be resetted to 0, and then you write the actual W data. Or you want to append, wherein when you say append, it goes down to the actual, the next line on the next line of the data. So for example, if we have row 1 and we insert another data, it goes to the second row. But if you don't put the append data to true, what will happen? It will reset the actual text file, it will clear the text file, and then insert the new one. So the previous data will be overwritten. Okay, so I'll be using true for this one. Okay, and then don't forget to close the actual stream. So now we have managed to create the file and then write a certain data on a file. Okay, so now we'll be going to the data, we'll be going now to the design of the registration. Okay, this is the registration. I'll just put the tab index so that when I tab, it will automatically go to the control that I want. 0. Okay. One, 2, 3, and then 4. Now, so this is the actual code, the actual form that we will be using. So if we go to my specific folder or the default folder, let me check on it. So if you check the bin debug, okay, there are a lot of text files that being created right now. But the thing that we want to monitor, if there's a file called, okay, what is the file? File name. The file name is userreg.txt. Okay, so I'll go to userreg.txt. If you look at userreg.txt, I'll just delete all of those text files. Doesn't matter. So I'll just delete all of them so that we can see. Okay, so I already deleted all of the text files. So you can see there is no text file on the default folder of the program bin debug. So what we want to do is, if we manage to create the actual program correctly, so it will create a text file and then we'll be storing the data. So I'll just create or change the start of the program. Okay, the name is registration. Okay, so I'll just change this one, registration. Okay, so if I run the actual program, so you see the registration. Just disable my antivirus because it will take time for me to load it. So this is the registration, but the save button is not yet functioning. So in order for us to do that, okay, in order for us to make it work, we'll be going to the registration form. I'll be initializing our class. So the name of our class is class CLS user registration. CLS user registration. CLS is equal to new CLS user registration. So I have an option. For me to instantiate it on form load, but to make it more functional, instead of creating what we call calling create flat db, I'll just create a constructor for this one so that automatically it goes to this function. So I'll just put the name of CLS registration, user registration, so that it will work. Okay, so meaning if I run the application without a parameter, it will run this one first. Okay, it will run this code even though I did not call this one. So it will, when we initialize this one, it goes automatically here. So if you check it if it is going through this one without without putting it in the form load. Let's check it. So the breakpoint shows that it goes to this CLS user registration. So if I run the code, if I run the actual application, so I'm hoping that there will be an application, there will be a text file on the default path that we have created. So here, so you can see that we have user registration.txt. User registration.txt is created through code, not created manually. So now, afterwards, we'll be creating the functionality of these codes, the button save. For the button save, it's very straightforward. So since we have created the class create user, so we need to call this one, right? Create user. But prior to doing that, we'll be having some validation. So what validation? You need to retype the password if it is match the password and the retype password, then that would be the time that you'll be going to the create user account. So first is we'll be creating text user, change the name of the text box so that we can easily reference it. Text name, text uname, okay, text password, okay, and then text pass for the retype. Okay, so I'll just double click save button. So on the save button, what I'll be doing is to call the registration. Okay, so now how do we accomplish that one? So first is we'll be having what we call the validation first. If text password pass the text is equal to text password dot text, therefore you do the code, you call the function cls dot create user. Take note, the create user starts with username instead of name. So create user, and then I'll put the text uname dot text name the text, and then text password the text. So you can see that we have managed to send that parameter. There's an error on it. 1 2 3. Okay, I think we have created this one to the password, the retype password as a another parameter. So now if the actual password match on the text password and text password, then it will go to create user. Else we inform the user that the user password did not match. Okay, so password did not match. So if we run the actual application, it must create a data on the CLS registration. Okay, user registration.text. If you look at user registration.text, there is no data on it. So if you run it, take note, if you open this one, make sure to close it before running your application. It might have an error, and it will tell you that the file is already open or used by another program. So I'll use a data here, and then the password with username would be the password is 1234 1234. Okay, let's make it a way that it will not match. So I'll save it, and then password did not match. So no, the program identifies that the password did not match. So if I do 1234 and then remove AA, it should there will be no message on it. It must there will be no message, no error to be seen. So it means that it is already written on the text file. So there is no error. So if we open user registration, we have managed to create a data on a text file. So Benny Tolentino at Nebo, and then at 1234, we have managed to do user registration. Now, The tricky part on this application is that how do we generate the ID? To generate the actual ID, we need to traverse through all of the data. Okay? So how do we do that? We need to access the last item on the data. So we will be creating a program. Okay? So to do that, we will be creating a method or a function that returns a certain ID. So how do we accomplish that one? So if we observe the data that we have inserted, all of those data that being inserted will be represented on a row. So for example, if we run the application and we type again a new username, test, right? Test, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we go to the data, if you will check the actual text file, it will have 2 items. Okay? We have 2 items. So in order for us to accomplish the ID, we need to get the last item being inserted and look for the first column if what would be the content, and we increment by 1. But right now we have no ID on it. Okay, so at runtime there is no content, there is no actual content of the data that we are, or the user registration that we are doing. So what I'll be doing is to delete the file first. Okay, so we need to delete the file first. I'll be deleting this one, and then I'll be creating a variable which is the user ID. So I'll go to Note Manager, registration rather. Okay, and CLS registration, and then I'll declare a variable here. Okay, I declare a variable here, a ID, in UID. Okay, UID is equal to 0. So if at first instance, we'll be putting this one, UID dot toString. Okay, at first run that we are trying to accomplish the creation of the file, the actual content of the file is 0. There is no ID on it. Okay, there is no ID on it. So I'll be citing UID plus 1. Okay, UID plus plus. So that will be having 1. Okay, the first item that we'll be inserting is 1. Else, if it is not, okay, if it is already existing, we'll be creating some parsing of data. So in order to parse it, we'll be creating a code which is string last data. We get the last data being inserted, last data, and then we'll be having file that read lines. Okay, read lines, read line. Okay, read all lines. Okay, and then we put fpath, then we put last. Okay, last indicates the last item being inserted. Okay, so take note that our convention is ID at, okay, ID at, then username, pname at, uname at, password. Okay, so that is our convention. So in order for us to get the first column, we create a what we call splitting of data to convert it into array. So data, okay, is equal to last data dot split. Okay, so split indicates what would be the character to be used. In our case, we are using the @ character. So @ so take note of the single quote. single quote represent a character, but if you create double quote, use double quote, it will use what we call string, so it will not accept that parameter. So use single quote only. So now, so on our UID, we will be creating some parsing of data. UID, okay, we assign UID and we manage to data sub-0. We already know that sub-0 is the ID. The first column is ID, okay? Then we convert that one into integer. Int that parse data into an integer. Okay, so we have already managed to create the user ID of a person. Okay, so let's check if it is working or not. So I'm expecting that 1, 2, 3 will be inserted as we type a new user. So for a new user, let's see, test, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, save. Okay, if we save, we will be looking at the file. Let's see if the file managed to create the actual user account. So it must have a ID of 1. So we have created an ID of 1. So the next part is to create another. Okay, so we'll be creating another user account. Let's see if we will manage to create 2. Okay, so let's see, the username is test1, and then save. Okay, there is no error. So if we check the data, so test2, 1, still we are getting some 1. Okay, why? Because we did not increment on the actual, we did not increment to the actual creation of data. So where do I put the incrementation? So we'll be doing, okay, so 1, we will be doing incrementation in here. Okay, CLS registration. So you'll be incrementing UID plus plus. Okay, we add one step to UID. Okay, so we run it again. So let's see. So it must be, if I create another account 1, 1, and then it becomes 2. So test AA 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. Save. Then you look at the actual data. So if we reopen it, oh, see, we have we need to check our code. There is a missing part. Oh, this one, because data we did not increment in this part. So there, so we have +1 again here. Prior to insertion, when we load it, we add 1. Okay, so it becomes 2. And then after insertion, we add another 1, becomes 3. Okay, so let's see. So if I add this one, there will be, the data that we have is already 1, 1, 1. So if we get the last item, it becomes 1, 1, 1, and then 2. So if I close this one, okay, close and save. Okay, so if I open the file again, okay, 1, 1, 1, 2. And if I add another one, so 2, save, and then close it again. Okay, so let's open it. Okay, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. So if I close the application, run it again, so it must be 4. So if we run the application again, so it might have a 4 ID. The fourth one would be, there will be an ID of 4, the last one. Save. So if we look at the actual data, close this one, and we go to the text file, there is a 4. So we have managed to create an auto-increment value of the ID of the data. Why do we need to do this one? It's very important on using this one because we'll be using this as a unique identification for each row. And if we edit a data, meaning if we want to edit the data, we'll be having a parameter, or we'll be looking at the parameter 3 or 2 if it is available or not, and we manage to delete it or not. Okay, so how do we now? What we want to do is to create a delete the file and double check if the ID is working or not. So I'll delete this one. Okay, so if I delete it, so if we run the application, it must have managed the creation of ID. 2, 2. Okay, so there must be a data having an ID of 1 and 2. So we're done. So we're done with the insertion. Okay, so the next part that we want to do on creating the actual application is to view all of the user be created. So how do we do that? So we need to read all of those data. So first is we create a method to create a view all of the data. View data. Okay, so view data. Then we put a parameter of list view where we put the actual data that we have created. So take note, on my part, since I'm using Visual Studio 2022, if I'm not mistaken, there is I did not type using system.windows.form. If in your case, if list view is not opening, if there's no what we call snippet, when we are trying to type list view, you can see list view when you are trying to type it, meaning you need to import using system windows.forms. Okay, so next is to clear the list view. lvc that items that clear. Okay, yeah, and then what we want to do is to insert the actual data. Okay, insert the actual data on a list view. So to do that, we'll be creating a stream reader is equal to new stream reader. Take note, our stream reader have a parameter which is the path. Now we are using fpath. We use fpath to do the actual data. Now we do the reader. Okay, we do the reader while reader dot read line thing. Then I'll be creating a variable here, string line is equal to empty, and then what we want to do is we assign the actual line to the reader and then not equal to that. So what does it mean is that we iterate through all of the data. Okay, so this while statement, what it does is imagine that on the first run it will read the first row, second row, and on the first run it will read the first row. In the second run it will read the second row until such time that the program identifies that the next line being read is empty or null. It will stop the actual reading of the text file. So that is the use of this statement, while line is equal to reader that read line not equal to null. So the line being read will be assigned to a string which is line. Okay, the name is line. So now we need to split it again to put it on the list view per column. Okay, so for example, we want to split it. So what we do is string data is equal to line that split. Take note again, with the split we use single quote, and then we put the delimited character that we are using. In my case, it is using @. Now we'll be adding the data on our list view. So on our list view, if you look at the list view, our list view is on a ID, name, and username. So ID, name, and username. So we need to create a list view item first. New list view item, and then put the actual data, which is sub-0, is the ID. Okay, take note, the ID is sub-0. I think we don't need to do toString anymore. Okay, and then lv.subitems.add, then we put data sub1 because it's already correct. It's the first column is the second column is the name, and then lastly is sub2 for the username. And then we put it on the list view. lvz.items.add, it is lv. Okay, so take note that we are using the name of the list view here is lvz, but the name of the actual list view on our form is list view 1. So I'll be changing this one to lv accounts. Okay, so lv accounts. So, yan. So I'll change this one to lv accounts. Okay, lv accounts, and then this one, the name is lvz, but on our form again, the name is lv accounts. Okay, so to call the actual loading of the data, we'll be having registration load. Okay, after registration, on the form load of our form, I'll double click the form to go to form load. So I'll be calling cls.load, I think. Okay, so let's check our class view data. Okay, view data, we call view data. Okay, and then we put lv accounts. Okay, so take note that on our program, we need to close all of those file manipulation we are using. So in my case, I'm using reader and writer. So I'll just need to close reader to be accessible, and will not, so that we will not encounter the error that a program is using the actual class or file. So if we run this one, check it again, it should load the actual data that we have created. So for example, if I do the next thing again, add new data again, so it need to be putted on the list view. So on the save button, we need to update the save button. We need to call the view data, so that if we insert new data, it will refresh the list view data. Okay, so here we go, we call lv accounts. Okay, so lv accounts, and then we run the program. So let's see. So we have lv accounts, and then we test one, test, save. So you see, we have already managed to create a data having an ID. Okay, so we have managed to create a functionality to create the actual database, and then we have registered the data on our text file. The next functionality that we want to do is to create a function to edit the data here, the data. So, but in order for us to make it more functional, I'll be adding another column. I'll be adding the password. Okay, but I'll be adding a width of 0. So I'll put the width become 0 so that it will not be visible. So on our registration, I'll be adding another data so that it will show the password. So I'll be using this one, and then change it to 3. Okay, another functionality that we want to do is to clear the text box. Okay, so I'll just create a method here, void clear controls. Okay, controls, and then we'll be clearing text, the name, the text, is equal to empty, txt password as the text is equal to empty, then txt uname, the text is equal to empty, txt password, the text is equal to empty, so that every time that we type new data, it will clear our controls. So I'll just call clear data here. Okay, clear controls rather, and then I'll just add another button again, so button that will clear all of the text box. So I'll just change this one to clear. Okay, so clear, and then on the click I'll remove this one, and then double click it, and then call clear data, clear controls rather, clear controls. So there you go. So after doing that, so we have make it more systematic, since we have managed to clear all of the controls after insertion. Now what we want to do is to edit an item here. So if I click an item here, it goes to this one, and then I'll click edit. Okay, so I'll click it might be save, it will automatically save the data, update the data that we have created. So for example, select an item, edit, and then type, and then save. That is the sequence that we want to accomplish. So we'll be having some indicator that when we press edit, okay, click edit, and then we click edit, we will be checking if we want to edit or not, or we want to save the actual data to be inserted as new data. So how do we accomplish that one? So when we press edit, we check if there's an item being selected. If LV accounts, okay, that selected item, okay, that count is greater than 0, therefore we want to edit. So we assign the value of our txt name, that text is equal to txt LV accounts, that selected items, sub 0, that sub item sub 1. Okay, sub 1 because that would be the name of that person. Okay, and then txt uname, the text is equal to LV accounts, that selected items sub 0, that sub items sub 2, which is the actual username. Okay, so we assign txt uname and txt name and uname, and then txt password, that text is equal to LV accounts sub 3. Okay, so sub 3, okay, sub item sub 3. So we have the function like this. It will work like our program is selecting an item here, okay, and then press edit, goes there. So select this one, check, it's changing, the data is changing. So now, sir, we are talking about the actual registration. We have the password being shown. So in order for us to accomplish a masking on it, we have a property on Visual C#, which is the password character. So here, you put password character, any character that you want. You can put at, number sign, or dollar sign. If you want to be more prosper, then use dollar sign. Okay, so if we run the actual program, so you'll see that every time that we type for the password, even I type different character, it shows dollar sign. If I select an item here, it shows the actual password, but into a masking data, which is a dollar sign. Okay, Another functionality that we need to enable first is the full row select. Okay, full row select so that we don't only select the ID but also any part of the column will be selected if we click portion of the row. Okay, so full row select is true. So if you look at the functionality, it shows like this. Okay, it highlighted the entire row of data. Okay, so now to proceed with the edit, okay, we need to have a what we call way for us to check if we want to edit or not. So when do we do edit is when we select an item and then we edit. Okay, so our indicator would be, we'll be having a let's say change the color of this one if it is click. It might be like that. Okay, or or when we save, we'll be having a function to identify if we have selected an item, or let's make a way to have another button, might be, then we change this one to update. Okay, so update. Okay, update will triggers updating of data. Okay, so how do we do this one? So if you observe the actual function that we are trying to do, is that we select an item, we edit it, then we type certain data and reflect the changes that we want. Press update. So the most common functionality that the easiest thing that we will be doing to accomplish that is to do some iteration through all of the username, through all of the data that we have. So we loop through all of the data, but prior to looping, we need to update the item being selected here. So on the update function, what we want to do is to update the data. So how do we update? First, we need to update the content of the list view, not directly updating the text file. So we go to the event and remove this one and click and check if there's an item being selected. LV, that's selected. If LV accounts, that's selected. Items, that count is greater than 0. Okay, it is greater than 0, therefore we assume that we want to update that data being selected. So LV accounts that selected item sub 0 dot text is equal to the actual sub 1 rather, sub 0 dot sub item sub 1, which is the name, txt name dot text. That would be the name of the person. Take note, we don't need to edit the ID, text, and then LV accounts that selected item sub 0 that sub item sub 2 dot text is equal to txt uname text. LV accounts that selected item sub 0 dot sub items, okay, that sub items sub 3 dot text equal to txt password dot text. Okay, so we have updated. With this code, we will be updating the content of the list view. Take note, the content of the list view, not the content of the text file. Okay, so because later on, it's more, we need to iterate through all of the data on the list view and then concatenate all of those data and store it on the what we call text file. So, but before that, we also need to check if text t password, the text end is equal to text t password.text. That would be the time that we need to update the actual content of the list view being selected, or the item being selected on the list view. For example, we select this one, edit. Okay, so the password is, we change it to 23456, 23456, and then we update it. You'll see there's no changes because the name did not change. Okay, but if we change the name, for example, then update, you'll see that that item being selected, the name is changed to Hoven, and another, we change the username. There you go. So you can see Hoben Nebo is already changed. So it's very straightforward. It's very easy. So for example, we go to test 2, change it to test V. Okay. So change it to test V, then update. So it will change. No, there's no problem on updating it. But take note, we did not reflect it on the text file. We did not reflect it yet on the text file. So if we rerun it, still the changes that we did not reflected. So how do we reflect it, or how do we put it on the text file? Here comes the technique that we'll be using. This technique will be used for the updating and deleting of data. So meaning it is a function that is very straightforward, flexible enough that it will handle the writing. It will handle the writing of those data when it is edited or deleted. Okay, so how do we accomplish that one? So we'll be creating public void update data. Okay, so and then we create a parameter which is a list view. Okay, list view lv, then lv say, and then what we want to do is to iterate through all of the items. So I'll be using for loop, and then lv say. Okay, let's see, it's a lot more easier if we use for each. Let's see, items. Okay, I'll just do. Okay, let's see what will happen. lvsa.items. Okay, we iterate through all of the items of the list view, and then what we have to do is to create a string wdata that we concatenate all of those data with the item on a list view. So for example, item sub 0, the text that items. Okay, so I'll be using this view item for this one. Item sub 0, the text. Okay, what happened? Sub that items. Okay, items the text rather. For the first column, it would be the actual ID. Okay, the ID. So plus, put at sign. Okay, to make it more easier for you to read, what I'll do is wdata is equal to items sub items sub 1, the text, plus at sign for our. Okay, so I'll do this one so that it will not be an issue. Happen. Okay, so I'll do this. Clear it. Declare this one in here so that we will not be having some issue. So data plus, okay, there, plus equal, and then let's see what will happen. We'll be exploring it. Okay, so I'll just concatenate this one. 0, 1, 2, 3. So here is the part of the ID, the part of the name of the user, the username, and the password. So I'll just remove this one. Instead, I'll put /r/n for the new line. Okay, it goes to the next line. Okay, so that's it. So after that, what you want to do is create a function to write the data. So still we'll be using stream writer. Writer is equal to new stream writer. So what you want to do right now is to append all of those data. So delete all of the data, replace the actual content of the text file with the new content that we are trying to put. So we'll be having like that. So we will be clearing the data. So now we write the data writer. Okay, that write, you put w data. So now we are expecting that the writer will now write the updated data that we have created. So this is the function for the update data. So take note, we remove the append from true to false. Okay, from this one it means it will be false. Okay, so it will not concatenate the existing data. It will clear the existing data. Let's check it first so that we can identify if it is working right or wrong. So now update data, we call on the update, we call update data. So here we call cls dot update data. Okay, update data, then we put lv accounts. Okay, so I think if this one, if our code is correct, it will automatically updates our data being selected. So test, change this one to, the name would be Hoben, the username is JJ, password is 1234, and then update. Already updated the list view. So what we want to do is to check whether it is updated or not. So it's already updated. Okay, so if I change the missing part that we have not integrated is on the update, we call the cls.viewData. I think okay, it doesn't matter because we have already updated the list view. Clear data rather, clear user. Okay, clear controls. We'll clear the controls. Okay, so for the update, we have now managed to do this one. So let's see. Okay, then test. Okay, test, and then let's see if we can test 2 is edit. Okay, test, I think even though we don't press edit, we can actually update the data being selected. Okay, test 2, and then let's see, let's say Ben okay, so we have already updated the data. So if we rerun it, let's check if it's still okay. So we have managed to do the updating of the data. So update, and now the last part of our application is to delete the item. So to delete item is very simple and straightforward. Go to delete, double click delete, and then as always we need to check whether LB accounts that selected items is greater than 0. Okay, so that we can identify if there's an item being selected. Therefore, what we want to do is let's remove the data on the list view. Okay, so we'll be removing the data on the list view. Okay, so actually we can create a loop so that if we have created multiple selection of an item on a list view, we can do that. Okay, but if you want to accomplish that one, multiple selection, we can do this one. So for each, we will be having some for each functionality. So list view item, then we put LV accounts that selected items. Okay, so what we want to do is LV accounts that remove. Okay, we remove an item, items, LB accounts that items that remove. Okay, remove, and then the item being removed. Okay, so that remove me. Okay, so if we do that, if we do this functionality or we integrate this functionality, what will happen is that if you select an item, it will delete. Okay, but if you select multiple item, all of them will be deleted. Okay, so but those things are not yet updating the actual content of our content of our text file. To update that, we call cls that update data. Okay, LB accounts. Okay, so let's see. Okay, delete. So we go and rerun the program. So we have already 3. Delete it again, close it again. Let's see what will happen. Okay, so there is an error because there is no data on the file anymore. Okay, so what we'll be doing is we add a function here, string if condition, if let's see if we get not equal to not. Let's see if this one will work. Not sure if this will work or not. And change this one to 1 so that we will not be having a problem anymore. Okay, check if it is null or not. Sequence contains no element. Okay, this is the code that we are trying to check. Oh, it happened. Okay, let's see what is the problem with this one. Okay, So in order for us to accomplish that one, let's see what will happen. Mhm. Okay, might be that length equal to C. Okay, there you go. So if not length is not equal to 0, let's say test then test equal 3 1 4 1 3 save. We run it again. Test 2. Okay, so now it's working. So another functionality that we want to accomplish is prior to deletion, we ask the user if they want to delete it or no. So we create a message box here, message box that show, then are you sure you want, okay, then we have what we call the dialogue result. What would be the dialogue? Okay, so message box button yes no, it is yes or no, and if it is dialogue result, that yes. Okay, so first it will ask you if you want to delete or no, if you want to delete the data or not. If you press yes, therefore it will delete the data, but if not, then it will not delete the data being selected. So for example, you select an item here, delete, okay, no, so it will not be deleted. Delete, then press yes, then automatically it is deleted. So that is the function that we have already managed to do. We have created a function to identify what would be, we created a function to add a data, edit, and delete a data for our program. So the last implementation of our program is to create a certain functionality that will indicate, or that will use those data being inserted to log in a user to a specific program. So what do you mean by that? So for example, if we go to the program data that we have created, okay, so this one, so we have no data still, we have deleted the data. Okay, so if I run the program, for example, this one, if I run this program and then manage to do this functionality, save, okay, then A 1 2 3 1 2 3 save, and then let's say a true name, then 1 save. Okay, so I have username of Ben and V. So now I'll be creating a simple login form. Okay, so I'll be adding a new item, which is a form. I'm not sure if there's still a login form that is default in Visual Studio. I think there is no form. So I'll do this form, add this form, and then what I want to do is to create a certain text box and a form. text box and a button to log in. Okay, so here I just copy that one. Then the next part is to put this one as login. F2 for login. Okay, so here is our login, and then what I want to do is to go to the registration class we have created, and then we create a method called login. Okay, so public void login, and then string username and string password. Okay, so here I'll be adding a login, and then what I'll be doing is I'll do stream reader is equal to new stream reader. Okay, and then what we want to put here is the actual fpath. So fpath, then while reader, while line string line is equal to empty, while line is equal to reader dot read line. Okay, read line not equal to none. Okay, so here is the code, and then still we will be using the split function, string data is equal to line dot split with a single quote and an at sign. Now what we want to do is to check whether the data sub 2, which is the username, is equal to username the text username and password the text password data sub 3 the text is equal to password. Okay, so there you go. If it is okay, then I'll call a form node manager node class. Okay, and then node dot show, and then what I want to do is put this one form frm, then frm dot height. Okay, then break. So what I want to do is to create a checker to identify whether if the data is existing or not. Checker, then if it is correct, if the username and password are correct, therefore I'll add 1. Okay, so if checker is equal to 0, therefore the username and password did not exist. Okay, or did not match. So message box dot show password username password did not invalid username or password. Okay, so invalid username and password. Okay, so we have invalid username and password. Okay, so now let's try the login form. So we have created the username, password, and then right now I have managed to create an account, this one, code flash, and then I encoded the password. So let me change the password because I forgot it. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, and then update. Okay, so code flash and the password is 1, 2, 3. So now, in order for us to use the class for the login or to access the login method that we have created on our CLS user registration, we need to call this one the login. Okay, so in order for us to call it, we'll be creating a instantiation of the class. So CLS user registration, CLS is equal to new CLS user registration. So now if you'll be calling up the CLS user registration, create login, okay, it will ask you what would be the username and password. So right now we have the txt username and txt password. So we call what would be the source of the username is uname.txt, and txt password is the text. Okay, so what we want to do is clear txt username, txt uname.txt for the login. Okay, and then txt password for the password. So we clear it so that if we, regardless if it's correct or not, we're clearing the txt uname and password, and then we set the focus to txt uname.focus. Okay, so that our cursor will be on the first text box. So I'll just change the startup form. So I'll be using form 9. Okay, form 9 is our login. So if you run the application, you'll see the username and the password. So for example, if you don't know the password, I'll just create a random username and password. There will be no action, there will be no message being shown. But if we look at our CLS user registration, it says here, okay, so we need to, the program did not identify if it is existing or not, or the username and password is valid or not. So what we need to do is to create a variable checker equal to 0, then make it checker. I think there is I made this code earlier but that did not save, so let's just retype it. Am I correct with the class that I'm accessing? Okay, CLS user, okay, it's correct. So now checker, so what you want to do is if checker is equal to 1 or equal to 0, therefore it will tell you message box show valid username or password. Okay, so if we run the application, put username here, test, and put a wrong password. Okay, invalid username and password. But if I do this one, and then I'll put the password is 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it will show the form 9. So form 9 is already there. So but prior to that, what we want to do is to get a parameter here, frm, create a parameter here for the parent, so that we can hide the login form. Okay, so that's it. Okay, and then go to the form 9 and make it center position, so that it will be on the center. Startup position will be center screen, so there. Then if we run this program, we have managed to we'll manage to have a login form and a registration form. So for here, for example, I type here wrong username and password, correct username but wrong password. Test will not allow me to log in, but if it is correct, example code flash, and then I'll use 1 2 3, will show me the note manager. Now take note that these codes are not yet functional. For the next version of our application, or the next episode, we'll be implementing flat file database for the note manager. Remember that on our technique on creating the note manager category and its node, what we did is we create a physical folder and a file. Now our goal is connect the CLS, the user registration text file to another text file where it shows or holds the actual notes of a person. So we'll be creating another version of the note manager which will integrate a flat file database. Okay, so that's all. So happy coding.